Thanks a lot, Dennis. Appreciate that. Just a quick announcement here. We are planning on having a Bible study. We're going to continue using that video that I know a lot of you have already seen is Genesis history. Planning on going over to where Don Duvall lives. They have a clubhouse there. So Don is inviting residents there to join in this Bible class. That's going to be the end of the month here, Thursday, April 30th at 2 in the afternoon. And so we wanted to announce that and would encourage you to take advantage, even though you may have already seen the video. It would be really nice to take advantage of that opportunity, have several of us members there that in case there are people who are interested there, residents of the mobile home park there where Don lives are there, they can see what we're about and see several of us. Keep in mind, not too long ago, I preached a sermon on reaching out to the lost. We looked at that very often quoted passage out of Corinthians where Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. And the point of that sermon was to demonstrate that we have to enlist God. God's the one that's going to give the increase, but keep in mind that we need to plant and water. And so you can say, well, I've already seen the video. I'm not interested in seeing it again. Well, understand that this could be an occasion where we can show God that we're trying to do our best at planting and watering. And God typically honors those who are doing their best. So I encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity that's coming up at the end of the month, Thursday, April the 30th at 2 in the afternoon at the clubhouse where Don Duvall lives. So just keep that opportunity in mind. This stuff out of the way. Okay, I'm going to start with looking at Psalm 15. Here is a picture. Probably you've seen this picture. This is a Norman Rockwell picture. And it just struck me as a wonderful example of what I think Psalm 15 is really trying to talk about. It represents, I think, the ideal home. And that's exactly what I think that David is ultimately after here in this psalm. Let's begin by reading this psalm, Psalm 15, beginning at verse number 1. Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? He who walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart. He who does not backbite with his tongue, nor speaks evil to his neighbor, nor does he take up reproach against his friend, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but he honors those who fear the Lord. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change. He who does not put out his money at usury, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved. And so in asking these questions at the beginning, look back at verse number 1, who shall abide in your tabernacle? Who shall dwell in your holy hill? The words that David uses there, he uses the term abide, he uses the term dwell. Well, those are all talking about your home, your abode, your dwelling place. So these are, where you live. And this is really what David is talking about in this psalm. How is it that we can create a home where God is welcome, where God feels welcome, and where we can create this perfect living environment? And again, that's why I picked out this picture, because to me, it represents all of those wonderful things that I think about when I think of home. Maybe you haven't experienced all those things, but I think you recognize, even if you can understand it only in terms of the ideal home, if you could have any type of home environment that you could possibly imagine, I think that this would be a pretty good approximation of what you'd wish for, of what you'd like. So hopefully you experience this kind of a home. But if you don't, you'll still recognize that this picture is talking about that ideal home environment where there is love, where there is bounty, where there is security. These are all the things that we desire, and this is what this psalm is about. This psalm is about how we can have this kind of home where God is welcome, where we can experience the goodness, the bounty, the happiness, and the joy that a picture like this, I think, so effectively represents. Well, the question then that David is dealing with was, well, how do I get that kind of a home? How do I get that kind of dwelling place, that kind of abode? That's what he's talking about. Well, he then goes on and explains the qualities that allow us to have this wonderful home-like relationship with God himself. That working on the things that he talks about in subsequent verses are going to bring forth the goodness and the blessing that we can experience in a limited sense in this life right now, even though it's going to be imperfect. But surely the perfection of heaven will be something that we experience as well. So let's just kind of take a look at some of the things that David is talking about, these things that we can work on to create this dwelling place with God. So we're going to talk about creating a home with God. Notice in verse number 2, he says, he who walks uprightly. That's one of the first qualities that we want to be working on, to create this kind of home environment where God is welcome, that will result in these positive things that we think about when we think of the ideal home and the environment that creates. If you look at Proverbs 28, verse number 18, you can see kind of that same idea. The idea we see in verse number 2, he who walks uprightly. Proverbs 28:18, whoever walks blamelessly will be saved, but he who is perverse in his ways will suddenly fall. So again, very often we look at these as, kind of tedious commands. God's always telling us, here's how you need to live your life. You got to walk that straight and narrow. But what he's talking about here is the benefit that working on the development of these qualities and these traits. Here, one who walks uprightly will not fall. And so again, he's talking about the security that is brought about by our commitment. Now, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but we can make a commitment to walk uprightly. And that's what he's talking about. When we make that honest commitment, even though we're imperfect, God is saying, that's the kind of person I want to dwell with. That's the kind of person that I will make a home with, the kind of person that makes this commitment to walk uprightly. You can look in other passages as well in Isaiah 33. In Isaiah 33, beginning at verse 15, he who walks righteously and speaks uprightly, he who despises the gain of oppressions, he who gestures with his hands, refusing bribes, who stops his ear from hearing of bloodshed and shuts his eye from seeing evil, he will dwell on high. His place of defense will be the fortress of the rocks. Bread will be given to him. His water will be sure. Your eyes will see the king in his beauty. They will see the land that is very far off. So notice how these descriptions of walking uprightly have a lot to do with how you treat your fellow man and the people around about you. That's something that we're going to see frequently repeated by David as you go through this psalm. A lot of creating a good home environment where God feels at home is not just thinking in terms of how you relate to God, but also thinking in terms of how you relate to your fellow man. And these passages all, once again, speak of the benefit. Now, these can be challenging to do that because sometimes you're dealing with people that are hard to get along with, perhaps even in your own family. But God says you make that commitment to try to do these things, you are going to be blessed. And that's the point. There's a lot of times people miss this connection. They miss this connection. They look at, again, as I said, God's call to walk uprightly is just another tedious rule. Is this just what God does? He has all these rules. He has all these laws, and they're all hard to keep. And I just don't understand why he's so nitpicky about everything. Well, what we're failing to understand when we approach God's law from that perspective, we're failing to understand the inbuilt blessings that this is what David is understanding. David is understanding, now I'm not going to be perfect, but I can make a commitment to try to walk uprightly. And I think if you know anything about the history of David's life, you'll know that he wasn't perfect. But in your estimation, did he make an honest attempt to walk uprightly? I think he did. I think he's a good example of that. So we can do that. And what he goes on and talks about is that the result of that is, listen to the language that he talks about. He talks about, verse 16, he will dwell on high. His place of defense will be the fortress of the rocks. You can create a home environment that's like a fortress that's unassailable. That the difficulties that you are going to face in this life is unfair. It's unfair because of the presence of sin. And you're going to face that unfairness. How do you fortify your life to defend? Well, that's what he's talking about. He's saying you make that commitment to walk uprightly. You begin to recognize, you know what? Yeah, it can be challenging. Yeah, but I'm going to make a commitment to try my best to walk uprightly. And God has promised me if I'll do that, my home will become like a fortress. I will dwell in the rocks. I will have a defensible space around me where I can find refuge. He goes on and says, bread will be given to him. His water will be sure. You will have everything you need. And this is what he's talking about. And so it really creates this home where God is a part of the home. And what I think David is driving at us again, it's why I picked that Norman Rockwell painting, because to me, I don't know if it represents that to you, but to me, it really represents all that's good and wonderful about a home. Well, that's what David's talking about. David wants that kind of home, and he realizes that the way he gets that is through his commitment to walking uprightly. The next thing he talks about, still here in verse 2, let's go back to Psalm 15, verse number 2. He talks next about and works righteousness. Now, again, these are all kind of closely related things, but this is an important element that we understand. We can look in such places as 1 John 3. In 1 John 3, beginning at verse number 6, whoever abides in him does not sin. Whoever sinned has neither seen him nor known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous just as he is righteous. And he who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of God was manifest that he might destroy the works of the devil. So what John is talking about is that, it's kind of like what Jesus said earlier, by their fruits, you shall know them. Just like you know a tree by its fruit, that's what he's saying here. And he's saying that about righteousness. A person who's committed to acting in right ways as God defines them, that's a righteous person. And a person who's not committed to that says, well, it doesn't really matter. We're all sin, we're all imperfect, so we don't really have to worry about sin. Well, that's lackadaisical attitude. And John is saying that that's unacceptable. We need to have this genuine commitment to walking rightly, as God defines it. James 2:17 hits the nail right on the head. James 2:17 says, thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. It doesn't matter, what we believe. James will also point out, hey, that's great. Even the demons believe and tremble. But it doesn't do them any good. Why? Because they're not acting on it. They're not concerned with this genuine commitment to these works of righteousness. So what we're working on is developing this actual relationship with God. It's not that we're thinking of the things that we do as meritorious that demand that God has to save us. What we're recognizing is the ability to create an environment where God feels welcome. God is welcome in our home. And the way that we do that is by making this genuine commitment to righteousness, to doing the best that we can do to serve and honor God. So that's what he's talking about. That requires a genuine commitment to obedience, and that will bring about this ideal home environment that David truly desires. Still, again, the next thing he talks about, still here in verse number 2, he says, speaks the truth in his heart. Now, there's at least a couple of ideas that I see in that statement. First of all, we need to get a kind of a definition of the truth, and what that is and how important that is. So you can look at such places as Proverbs. We'll have, Proverbs 23:23. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Also, wisdom and instruction and understanding. So he's putting a very high value on the truth. We need to put a high value on the truth. Unfortunately, this is one of the problems. As I have grown up, that's one of the transitions I've seen our culture go through. Used to be when I was a kid, there were a lot of people, they just accepted this idea of truth. Truth is an absolute. There are certain things that are just true, and you have to accept those. Well, that's been cast aside now. Everything's relative. And there is no truth. Whatever you want to believe is all okay. And so this is one of the ideas that David is saying you need to guard against this relativistic view towards the truth. Jesus himself points out the value of the truth, this absolute truth, this objective truth. It's real. Where do we find it? Well, in John 8:32, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Emphasizing the value of the truth. It sets us free. And this is what people don't understand. When they have this lackadaisical attitude, this relativistic view of truth, they just get tangled up in the complexities of life and sin, and their condition of their life, the circumstance of life, reflect that chaotic mess. And that's because they're not embracing this idea of understanding that there is a truth, there is a right and a wrong. It's kind of like gravity. How healthy would you be if you think, well, gravity might be true for you, but not for me. I can step off the edge of the cliff and I'll float. Well, what's going to happen to you if you honestly think that way and you act that way? Well, metaphorically, that's what people are doing spiritually. And they're just playing almost like Russian roulette with their life because they don't understand this concept of truth. Truth is absolute. That's what he's talking about. And truth sets us free. It's not your enemy. It's your friend. Again, it's like physics, as accepting the reality of gravity allows us to get, I've always enjoyed airplanes ever since I was a kid. An outfit in Europe, Airbus, they make an airplane that holds 800 people. And it can fly 600 miles an hour, 800 people. This thing is huge. You know why? Because they understand physics. They understand that there are certain laws that you have to, and you abide by those laws. And the benefit that you get, the technological advancements that can be made because you understand truth is an absolute. It's just really tragic that so many people cannot make that connection to the spiritual world. Just like in the physical world, physics rules. In the spiritual world, God rules, and there are certain laws, and you play fast and loose with those laws. It's like stepping off the edge of a cliff thinking you're not going to fall. It's just going to bring disaster to your life. Also, he talks about the importance of this coming from your heart. And so we can look at a couple of other passages here. This really is talking not only about a technical understanding of what truth is, that it's objective, that it comes from God, but it also comes from our heart. This is what we desire. This is what we want. So you look in passages like Matthew 15, verse 17. Do you not yet understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is eliminated, but those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile the man? For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, blasphemies. These are the things which defile the man. But to not eat with unwashed hand, that does not defile the man. And so Jesus is talking about the importance of your heart being kept pure. dealing with proper motives. This is so important for us to understand. Matthew 6 at verse 21, he says, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So to get your heart right, you have to figure out what's your treasure. And see, again, here's where the world misleads us. The world puts great treasure on money. The world puts great treasure on fame. The world puts great treasure on power. The world puts great treasure on having fun. Well, God's not against you having fun, but he's saying that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is truth. And in your heart, you have to treasure that. You have to see that's what's the most important thing. And that's the key to me being able to experience life in a way that I really want to experience it. It's not through these materialistic definitions. It's through God's definition. We speak the truth from the heart because we know that's what benefits. That helps create a home environment where God's welcome and brings all these blessings. Again, think of that Norman Rockwell painting. You want a life like that? Then treasure the truth. Speak the truth in your heart, and it will bring about that beautiful home environment that we so desire, that we can see is such a wonderful benefit and a blessing. The next thing he talks about, dropping down to verse number 3, Psalm 15, verse number 3, does not slander. Reading out of the King James Version, talks about backbiting. So the next several traits are, again, clearly aimed at how we treat one another. This is essential. This is perhaps one of the most important elements in how we create this positive home environment. We really don't just focus on our relationship with God. That's very important. That's paramount. But we also we understand that our relationship with God is also a function of how we relate to the people around us. And so what he's talking about here, don't be a slanderer. And there's lots of other passages that talk about that. 1 John 4 at verse number 20. If someone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? So that's the very point I was making. John is saying, listen, you can't talk about loving God and yet having hatred, animosity, bitterness, and speaking slander towards your brother. It just doesn't compute. You cannot sustain a viable relationship with God when you don't see this interconnectedness in the way that you relate to the people around about you is also a function of how you are relating to God. In Psalm 101, verses 5 through 8, whoever secretly slanders his neighbor, him will I destroy. The one who has a haughty look and a proud heart, him I will not endure. So he's saying, I'm not going to make my home with this guy. I'm just not going to be around those kind of people. My eyes shall be on the faithful of the land, that they may, listen, dwell with me. The faithful of the land, they may dwell with me. He who walks in a perfect way, he shall serve me. He who works deceit shall not dwell within my house. He who tells lies shall not continue in my presence. Early I will destroy all the wicked of the land, that I may cut off all the evildoers from the city of the Lord. You want to be a part of the city of the Lord, then you're going to understand how important it is how you relate to the people around about you. This is what he's talking about. And you need to understand that this is the weak link in so many families, because, sometimes some of the nastiest things we say are to our own family members. And when we allow our anger to build so that we begin to say those hateful, nasty things, that works to destroy. It destroys the fabric of the family. It destroys marriages. It's one of the reasons why divorce is so rampant. It's because people aren't understanding. Now, sure, they may get hurt. Somebody says something to you, it hurts your feelings. So what's the typical response? You're going to give it right back and then some. Well, God's saying, quit doing that. Instead of ratcheting up the conflict, instead of ratcheting up the anger, the slander, the hateful words, begin to back away. You can certainly say, hey, you know what? That really hurt my feelings. But let's sit down and talk about it. Let's put God, let's both say that we're going to put God first and foremost, because we know that if we put God first, he will bless us. We can find a solution to this problem if both of us put God first. See, so it's not wrong for you to say, this hurt my feelings. I think you did something that you shouldn't have done. That's not wrong to say that, but say it in a way that's not slanderous, in a way that's not seeking to inflict greater hurt. Well, I'll give you a taste of your own medicine. Do you see how that feels? I mean, it's sad to see so many people getting caught up in this trap. Satan traps these people in this slander, these hurtful, spiteful words that come spewing out of our mouth. God's saying, don't do that. Okay. The next thing he talks about, the vile person is despised. That's down in verse number 4. Now, keep in mind, he's not talking about hating. What he talks about really is in the second part of that. But he honors those who fear God. That's understanding what he means by, a vile person is despised. Is that you're understanding that there are wicked people in the world, and I'm not going to look up to those wicked people. I'm not going to use those wicked people as a model for my behavior. And so we can look at passages like James, the 2nd chapter, that really talk about this. James, the 2nd chapter, beginning at verse number 1. My brethren, do not hold the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with partiality. For if there should come into your assembly a man with gold rings and fine apparel, and there also should come in a poor man in filthy clothes, and you pay attention to the one wearing the fine clothes to say to him, you sit here in a good place. But you say to the poor man, you stand over there. Sit here at my footstool. Have you not shown partiality among yourselves to become judges with evil thoughts? So this is what he's talking about. He's saying, don't use the standards of the world to judge what you want to become yourself and how you define good and bad. It's just nonsense is what he's talking about. And so that's what he's saying, is that it's not that you hate that wicked person, it's that you don't want to be like. You can see the error of this wicked person, and you can see that a big part of this wicked person's problem is their priorities. And you're beginning to understand, their priorities are messed up. And I don't want to have anything to do. I want godly priorities. I want God's way of valuing things. I want God's definition of what's good and right, and what I should aspire to become, the kind of person that I want to be. I want to use God's definitions to do that. Well, what he's saying is this will pay dividends. This will create a strong home where God is welcome, and you will enjoy the blessings of that type of relationship. Finally, the last thing that he talks about there, dropping down to the last part of verse number 4 and going on into verse number 5, he who swears to his own hurt and does not change, he who does not put out his money at usury, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. And so what I think he's really talking about is that we want to aspire to become people who are not driven by self-interest. That's what I think he means when he says he swears to his own hurt. You may make a business deal, and then it turns out as you move further into that business relationship, you say, well, this is not working out for me. I'm not going to make any money on this deal. So you know what? I'm out of here. Well, yeah, but you promised you. I don't care. The mighty dollar, that's what determines everything for me. Well, he's saying, you know what? You make a promise, you keep it. What did Jesus say in, Matthew, if I have it up here, Matthew 5:37, remember that? Let your yes be what? Yeah. And your no be? No. Yeah. That's the idea. When you make a promise, what? Keep it. Now, this builds strong homes. This builds people within the family unit that can recognize that when such a person says such a thing, it's good. They're going to follow through with it. They can trust it, and that's so important. Likewise, you can look at Philippians 2 verses 2 and 3. Fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition. See, that's the problem. We let the world define for us. You always got to be looking out for number one, and number one is me. Well, he says, don't do that. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit. Listen to this. But in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. We also have to include in our view that all the people around us, they're just like me. They're made in the image of God, just like I am. I might not agree with them, but they still are image bearers of God. And I need to see and understand that they have legitimate interests, and their legitimate interests are just as important as who? Me. And that's how I begin to look at the world. I begin to see the world is full of people who have desires and aspirations and dreams just like I do. And I need to value them. I need to understand that those things are important. It's just like, I can't understand why there's some of you people sitting there, you actually like broccoli. What's with you people? Well, see, I need to value you broccoli lovers, because it turns out broccoli is good for you, right? And I've been saying for years, I don't like broccoli, but I'll eat it. Like my dad used to say, you know what the difference between a good meal and a bad meal is? 24 hours of not eating. And so, there's been times in my life where broccoli tasted pretty good. So that's the point. We begin to, so we end basically with this idea. This is what he's talking about, working to develop these godly characteristics. Now, we're not going to be perfect, but we can make a genuine commitment to these things. And here's the payoff. When we make a genuine commitment to develop these traits and characteristics, this creates a home that is loving and secure and a place of bounty. It's what you dream about. And this is what God wants to get. Is God being a bully? Is God being a guy that just wants to boss you around? Or is God full of love and care and compassion, saying, this is what I want for you. I want you to experience a home that is kind and loving and compassionate and secure, a place of refuge. Well, this is what he's talking about. And all these things can be yours. Perhaps you're not yet a member of the Lord's body. All these things can be yours by coming forward, hearing, believing, repenting, confessing. You can be baptized and added to his body. And you can make this commitment to start working on the development of these traits and characteristics. Maybe you've already done that. You already are a Christian, but realize in some way, perhaps in the ways we've talked about this morning, have fallen short. You can ask for God's forgiveness. Likewise, you can request the prayers of your brethren on your behalf that you might be strengthened. If there's any way that we can be of spiritual help, come forward, make those wishes known while together we stand and sing.